I want to buy a house right now in Utah, average house price is what? 400, 350?
Yeah, probably closer
entry
to
level?
450. Yeah.
Probably close to 4.
4? Payment on that is roughly?
I did 380, right? So $20,000 down on a $400,000 house. That would bring you to principal and interest payments of about $2,500 a month. In addition to that, you're going to have insurance and you're going to have property taxes. And so by the time you get insurance and property, you're probably at about $2,900 per month. And that's what's hard, right? Is you take $2,900, multiply that by 4, and that's take home of $11,600. And that's, I think, illustrates
$11,000 a month?
Yeah. Gross.
What should your debt income ratio be? I have in the notes 25 to 35%, but what is that? Your take home, your gross? What are we talking here?
Yeah, gross. And so ideal, and this goes back to being in the accumulation phase. When you're later on in life, we have a lot of clients who have paid off all their debt, and that feels really good, and that's oftentimes the healthier place to be. But when you're in that accumulation phase, often younger, right? You're trying to leverage, you're trying to get into a house, you're trying to sometimes you need to do it for student loans or cars or things like that. And so you'll use debt, but what we want to see is that your debt payments aren't too painful, right? And I actually get that a lot from kids of clients who call and they're like, I'm trying to get into a house, how much can I afford? And their lending institution will lend right up to a 45% debt to income ratio. Yeah. What that means is that of all of your gross income, 45% is actually going towards paying down debts like mortgage, cars, student loan, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. And from my experience in working through plans with people, that's way too high. Like 45% is just going to be painful. That's gross. So the more optimal range is kind of that 25 to 35%, meaning that of all of your gross, the big number, right? The biggest number on the check, you take that and divide that by 4, and that gives you 25% of your gross income. Mm-hmm. And we'd prefer that all of your debt payments can be within that 25%, right? So your entire mortgage and any other, credit card, car payment, whatever else you have, all of that fits within 25% of your gross income.
Now, right. In Utah, average house price is what? 400, 350?
Yeah, probably closer to
entry level?
450.
Yeah. Probably close to 4.
4? Payment on that is roughly, Brian's going to get his calculator out. Because what I want to know is how much do you have to make to, you know what I mean? Because your average debt is what? And then what do you got to make to buy a house these days?
But it also depends on your down payment too, right, Brendan? So True. You should be saving in addition towards that house so that you can put down the 20%. I mean, so if if you're buying a $400,000 house, you should be putting $80,000 down towards it, putting the loan at $320,000. And so as you're running your numbers, Brandon, run it on 320. Current mortgage rates, and again, they fluctuate all over the place, but currently they're at, roughly 6.5, give or take.
Dang it, I should have put that in as you're going. So I did a little bit more conservative on the interest rate, 7%. I did 380, right? So $20,000 down on a $400,000 house. That would bring you to principal and interest payments of about $2,500 a month. In addition to that, you're going to have insurance and you're going to have property taxes. And so by the time you get insurance and property, you're probably at about $2,900 per month. And that's what's hard, right? Is you take $2,900, multiply that by 4, and that's take home of $11,600. And that's, I think, illustrates
$11,000 a month.
Yeah, gross, right? Which is really hard. And I think a couple things to consider on this, right? Is first of all,
that's no cars, no student loans, no credit cards. That's just the house.
Just the house. And a big part of the problem is interest rates. Mm-hmm. Interest rates being as high as they are with the home values as high as they are, it makes it really, really hard. And so I think the temptation is to let that debt to income ratio balloon out, right? My loan officer said I can do 45%. Right now, all of a sudden, I can almost cut that cut that income in half, and get approved. I think, I see a lot of people kind of at that 35% debt to income ratio, and that's still within the realm of like, all right, doable, but it's going to be tight. And that makes sense. But I think it's important to remember that just because you want to do something doesn't mean we can do it, right? We need to figure out a plausible way to make this work.
That was my next question. It's just because they allow you to take that much out
right.
doesn't mean you should, right?
Right. And so maybe, and that's where working with an advisor, working with someone to just work through the numbers and say, all right, how do we pull this all together? How can we, I remember when we were looking at buying our first house, there was a house we really liked. It was well within what our loan officer said we could afford. We went and we looked at it, we're like, let's do it. We're going to buy it. And it was Thanksgiving. Ironically, we went and got a pizza at Costco, came home, and I was like, I just don't feel good about, And so I went and I crunched all the numbers and we could have pulled it off probably, but it would have been so painful. It would have been so tight financially. We ended up buying another house. It was a great house, just, a fair amount less. And my wife and I look back on that still as one of the better decisions we made, right? It allowed us to just be comfortable while we built, income and built all the other things. And so I think similarly, and now is a different time than it was then, because now house prices and interest rates are so much higher. But I think you still look for opportunities, right? Can we buy a duplex and rent out half? Can we, can we make something else work? Maybe instead of buying a house, we're buying a townhouse or buying an apartment that we can build equity in. And so there's so many variable factors. The other thing that's important is a debt to the income ratio of 35% if you're making $50,000 is a lot different than if you're making $100,000 a year, And so, these are rules of thumb. They're not like hard and fast. If you do this, then you'll be fine. They're really, you should be sitting down, looking at budgets, looking at what, you can afford and what you're currently living on.
But there are rules of thumb that prevent stress, right?
Yeah, it provides cheap and easy guidance. But
cheap and easy
guidance isn't necessarily always the best
okay.
solution.